welcome to Christchurch Chats. This week it's the second Sunday of Easter, which means we're still talking about the resurrection. And Hazel came up with the question for today because I drew a complete blank. And Hazel was saying about, well, tell us, Hazel, what is the question for today? Can you put it?
It's about spirits or your soul going.
Oh, hang on. There's no soul space tonight, Malcolm. Have a sit down. You're alright. Have a sit down. You're on the internet now.
Am I?
Yeah.
I'm used to that.
Yeah, go and have a sit down over there.
Yes.
And then we're finished, alright? Yeah?
Yes.
So,
To disturb you.
turn it, that's alright. So, today,
Fancy
it's
not
usually
a bit.
you that walks in randomly, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
you know.
but it is typically you not to let anybody know what they're up to.
He's been busy.
Anyway, moving on, right, from all the cheek, what we're talking about really is spiritual experiences around death and bereavement, and how people can experience being with the person after they have died. So, has anybody ever had those sorts? I know I talk to a lot of people around funeral visits and bereavement and things. It's quite a common thing to have an experience of somebody after they've died. Alison, yeah, you're looking very firm there, aren't you? Yeah?
It's happened quite a few times. I would just like to talk about two lovely positive times. A few weeks after my father had died, we lived in a lovely bungalow, and I was thinking, oh my golly, there's an awful lot of things to think about. My daughter Bronwyn was 16. It just happened that I found my eyes literally focused on a fairly dull watercolour painting. So I really couldn't understand why. I obviously had to look at it. So I took it down, ripped open the back of it. I was getting a bit eager by then. And it was the lovely, painted on glass, was the picture of the light of Christ and holding the lantern.
Oh,
and I had no idea.
Holman Hunt thing.
Yeah, that's it. I had no idea it was there. Even looking back, I have no recollection that I would have known it was there. The second time, again, when my eyes were very much focused, I was staying at a beautiful little cottage, bed and breakfast, in Taddington, which is near Buxton in Derbyshire. And I found myself looking at this empty chair and thinking, I do wonder why. And then I thought, the husband who died about 10 or 11 years before would have sat there. And then I very clearly heard the words, it couldn't be done. And although that words may seem strange, I really needed those words to come. They didn't come, they came through this man whose name I cannot remember, from somebody who had promised me something and it couldn't be done. The next morning I thought, do I tell Margaret, his wife, or not? What do I say? And she told me that they had promised each other when he was in heaven, he'd be looking after people and she would look after them on earth, which she did for me very much.
You have loads of weird stuff happen to you, isn't it? Like, you know, that's quite interesting,
That is
isn't
why I
it?
like coming here.
Why? Because you're full of weirdness, full of weird people.
Yes.
That's all right then.
Yes.
Jill, you're weird. What do you reckon?
Not as weird as Alison.
No one's as weird as
No,
Alison.
no,
no
there
one's
you
as
are.
weird as Alison.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
My aunt had a particular laugh. When we had family gatherings, you might not have seen her, but you always heard this laugh, always rose above everything else, and you knew that she was there. So, of course, when she died at her wake, this laugh wasn't there. And it was, for me, it was like a great big hole in the whole thing, because it wasn't there, and I just really wanted to hear that laugh again. And one day, weeks later, I was sitting in church waiting for the service to start, and it was quiet, and in the rafters I heard her laugh. It was wonderful.
Yes.
My
Yes.
mother does stuff like
Yeah.
that. My mother goes on about when she sings in church,
Yeah.
she hears her father and her brothers singing with her, so she can
That's
hear them all
nice.
sing. And I suppose it's like what we're saying there with all sorts of things is that when you believe in heaven as the communion of saints, in other words, we're all there praising God together, and the veil between this world and the next at times can be thinned, is when we worship, we're actually joining in. And we say it in one of the communion prayers, don't we? We say, we join now in heaven's song. So we are joining in with the saints who are singing to God in the same way, and that's the same sort of thing you've had as well, isn't it? You know, and the same sort of thing you were saying there is that you have the times where the veil between this world and the next is thinnest, really, isn't it? Hazel, have you had any odd do's like that prompted you to kind of answer the, you know?
A few, yeah.
Because we're not talking to this one on the end, he's just going to ramble on about Jeremy Corbyn, right? Yeah. So
when my brother passed away in Jersey, my mum actually saw him a few days later at home in his bedroom sitting on the bed. And I just wonder, because I know my mum never told any lies, so I know it was true what she saw. And I just wonder, and as well, when my dad died at home, I was having to go and decorate the house, and he kept doing things, switching the heating on when I put it off, and he'd make the alarms go off as soon as I set foot in the door and stuff. And it was just too much for me in the end. I had to shout at him. But I just wonder if when people go to heaven as such, their souls, when do they go? Because it's like as though they don't go straight away. They sort of linger sometimes.
yeah, I think what I'm talking about here is slightly different. Right, is it going red now? Right, so I was thinking, it's not like a concrete block between the two. It's more like a kind of veil or a kind of membrane that and people can pass in between, isn't it? So if we believe in the communion of saints, we believe in the Holy Spirit, and we believe in the resurrection, then there are times where that veil will be sort of more thinner than it is at other times. So I don't think it's really a case of, like, you know, people sort of hanging around or anything like that. I think it's to do with things going between the two worlds, or the two dimensions, as it were. So that's why I would look
But
at it
Jesus
like
didn't
that.
go straight ahead, did he?
No, and that's the other thing as well, is that what we're talking about is kind of like those sorts of weird experiences which are very fleeting. And one thing that's come across to me more this year than usual is in the resurrection, Jesus spends a long time sitting and talking and discussing and eating with his disciples. So it's not that, it's a very different type of experience to what we've talked about. Paul, can you say anything about this without mentioning JC?
Well, I mean, for me, I mean, every Sunday, you know, sitting through one of your sermons, it's like dying. But it goes on and on. No, seriously, there's three things I would say. When my sister died, I had a time where, for quite some time afterwards, it felt like she was coming up behind me and putting her arms around me and giving me a hug. And it was really touching. Like Hazel said, it was almost overpowering at times. So I don't believe that people go straight away. I think that we're blessed as human beings because the love that you have for people and the memories that you have with them stays with you always. And all you have to do is close your eyes and that person's with you like that. So it never goes, and that's a real gentleness and kindness, which I take from God. And then the final thing I'd say on this is C.S. Lewis wrote a really good book, The Great Divorce.
Yeah.
And I would recommend, if people are thinking about this subject, they have a read of that book, because it sort of, in a C.S. Lewis way, explains how perhaps limbo and things like that work and how you move on.
I just summarised it, didn't I, basically? That's the whole thing.
No, that's what I mean about your sermons.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, all right. Yeah, but that is a very good book, actually, is The Great Divorce. And that's the thing, is that the resurrection shows us what the end of time will be. It reveals our own destiny to be like Christ, to be risen. And I think that when we do die, we step out of time into a place which there is no time. And all the way through the scriptures, we hear of the saints being with us and praying with us and worshipping God with us in this life and the next. And that's something which is phenomenal, but in the church we don't talk about it quite enough. So if you have any other questions, easy ones, any other abuse like Paul, please send them in, and we'll see you next week on Christchurch Chats.